Welcome to Who's That Pokemon, the only twice-weekly Pokemon anime rewatch podcast on the entire internet. If you didn't know, this is a retrospective look back on the Pokemon anime series, episode by episode from the very beginning. This show's been airing for over 20 years now and has over 1,000 episodes, yet it seems to get neglected by Pokemon fans, so I thought it was about time it got a podcast that was entirely dedicated to it. This week's episode is episode 2 of the Indigo League season titled Pokémon Emergency. The Japanese title for this episode is Showdown Pokemon Center. And this episode first aired in Japan on April 8th, 1997, and in the United States on September 9, 1998. And on this day in Pokemon history for the Japanese air date, there's actually nothing really of note. However, on this day in Pokemon history for the American air date for episode 2 of the anime, we actually have something pretty significant. It's the Fire Red and Leaf Green release for the Game Boy Advance in the US, I have to add that, in 2004, which obviously they are the Kanto remakes, which makes them pretty relevant to, I guess, this season of the anime because we're still in Kanto where it all began. So down the line in 2004, we'd get to go back to Kanto and experience what had become a nostalgic region by then. But moving on here to some of the info about this episode, we have a few human character debuts here, and in this section I should point out, I didn't point this out in the first episode, but this section is mainly for recurring characters, so you won't see the typical character of the day people popping up here as a debut, because I guess they're obviously their characters and it's their debut, but they're never seen again and it's not really important to mention. So something like Samurai, who we'll see in a couple episodes' time that Ash encounters, he's not going to be there in as a debut. But the debuts for this episode include Officer Jenny, Team Rocket, just as the kind of organisation is introduced, as well as Jessie, James, and Nurse Joy. The Pokemon debuts for this episode, we've got Team Rocket's Meowth, Chansey, Coughing, Ekans, Goldeen, and right at the very end we get a nice little debut for Ash's Caterpie. And before we move on to the episode summary and discussion, I would be doing a disservice to this show's name if I didn't mention the Pokemon that is the star of the Who's That Pokemon segment for this episode, and this week it is Coughing. But with all of that out of the way, we can get into dissecting the second episode of the anime. So before the episode actually kind of kicks off properly, we get a kind of short recap that goes over the events of the first episode, which personally, I think this is a pretty good idea. There's a lot of pretty important character development in the very first episode. So having this little segment here is, I mean, for older fans, it's probably not necessary. And, you know, watching it now on like Netflix when you're binging a bunch of episodes at a time, it's not really that necessary because it literally just happened. But as a kid, you know, you might have forgotten what happened in the first episode possibly, and you know, not every kid will have jumped in on the first episode. There would have definitely been kids who found out through word of mouth about the show and started watching. So I think it's nice to have the little short recap that basically goes over Ash and Pikachu's start to their adventure and how they become actual friends. And I mean, considering Pikachu is injured at the start of this episode, it's good to have that little recap too. However, we actually have a couple of errors here. The first error is when the narrator is recapping the episode and he incorrectly says Spearows. As we mentioned in the first episode, the plural of a Pokemon is the same as the singular, which is a pretty pedantic error, but I guess it is an error nonetheless. Our second error here is that in the Japanese version, it uses the same exact same dialogue when Ash has his kind of Pokemon Master speech at the very beginning when he's in his bedroom. However, the English dub changes Ash's introductory line for some reason. The original line is, "And I hereby declare to the Pokemon of the world, I will be a Pokemon Master. That is what I'll be." And then in the flashback, he says, "That's right, I declare to the Pokemon of the world, I will be the greatest Pokemon trainer, the greatest Pokemon master of all time." Which is a little strange that they went through the effort of doing these completely new lines when they could have just taken the easy way out and reused the exact same lines, because that's what the original was doing. So maybe potentially when they were dubbing it, they didn't realize that it was just exactly the same, and they had someone be like, "Oh yeah, okay, we'll dub it to this fash," and they've ended up having to do more work than they actually required. So we get into the actual episode here, and Officer Jenny is in the midst of alerting Viridian City's citizens of Pokemon poachers that they've been seen in the area, and she's kind of letting everybody know over an announcement, PA speaker, which I'm not sure, do they have PA speakers all over the city? I'm not sure how this is getting out to citizens. But while she's doing that, she spots Ash with Pikachu in his arms. She kind of questions his motives, because obviously there's been shady characters seen in the area, and this random kid has just come along. But it all gets sorted out, and she eventually gives him a lift to the Pokemon Center after his Pokedex confirms that he is from Pallet Town and received a Pokedex from Professor Oak. So first off here, I've got to mention that Officer Jenny's character design here is so iconic. It's just, I don't know, kids back then, for some reason, it just worked so well. I don't know why Officer Jenny became such an iconic character. If you ask somebody today who is a lapsed fan, who's just a fan when they were a kid, watched a bit of the anime, for them to name a Pokemon character, I feel like Jenny, and I'll mention it later, but Joy as well, are just something they will jump to immediately, which is kind of weird. Joy, they see quite a lot. They're always going to Pokemon centers, but I feel like the Jennies don't really feature that much, yet they're still so iconic, and I think it's just kind of down to such a vivid design, which props to I think the Officer Jenny is entirely an anime creation. I know Joy is kind of just taken from the games, but I'm pretty sure Jenny is just something they came up with, which, props to them. We also get a mention of the 2 mystery pallet trainers from Officer Jenny. She talks about how when Ash brings up that Pallet Town, he's from Pallet Town, sorry. She talks about how 3 other people had just passed through quite recently, and obviously we know one is Gary Oak, but the identity of the other 2 trainers is still a complete mystery, which has been a pretty big point of speculation for the Pokemon anime fandom ever since they were first mentioned in the very first episode. And my last little note before we move on with the rest of the episode is, I always thought it was kind of weird that Viridian City looks and feels so empty here. Ash kind of just strolls in, and I've never been able to figure out, is it sunset here or is it sunrise? It feels very vague. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be sunset, which makes it even kind of weirder that there's nobody in this town. This town feels so... Viridian City feels kind of lifeless. There's nobody on the street at all. And I'll get into it later about the only humans that appear in this episode, but you don't see, anybody out on the street, which I just always found so weird. He rolls into this town, it's a big monumentous occasion, he's made it to Viridian City, and then there's nobody around. It's just Jenny, which, I don't know, I always felt that was kind of a weird choice on the part of, I guess, the writers and the animators. So after this, we see Team Rocket introduced in their trademark hot air balloon, and James has a different voice actor here. I believe it's maybe the first 10 episodes. It might even be generous. It might even only be 5. That he's voiced by the voice actor slips my mind at the moment. But Eric Stewart starts doing James eventually, which I think most people will agree is his second voice is way better. The first voice is kind of similar. It's on the same track, but yeah, the second voice is just so much better, and just I feel like it's something that contributed to it being such an iconic character. On a similar note, Jessie and Meowth's voices really haven't been completely nailed down yet. Jessie's is pretty close, and Meowth is just... I feel like they haven't really gone balls to the wall with Meowth yet. Meowth's just... it's kind of a really a nothing voice. They also really haven't, in a similar vein, haven't kind of nailed down what Team Rocket is, kind of at this point, because they do their introductory spiel, and then Meowth says, "Just remember, I'm the top cat," and then James responds with, "You've got it," and it's a really awkward little segment here, which maybe I might not have felt as awkward at the time, but being so familiar with these characters and kind of knowing what their spiel is and kind of how they interact with one another, the whole, like, "I'm the top cat," and then "You've got it," it's so stilted and awkward. I don't like it. It feels so wrong. The pair slide into the Pokemon Center. That's Jenny and Ash, by the way. They slide into the Pokemon Center's foyer on Jenny's motorbike, much to Nurse Joy's dismay. And as I mentioned with Officer Jenny, Nurse Joy, such an iconic design. Again, they just smacked it out of the park. Nurse Joy quickly orders a stretcher and two Chansey take Pikachu into the emergency room. And Nurse Joy really scolds Ash here. There's kind of a theme in the beginning of the anime of just people with more knowledge absolutely ripping into Ash. We see it with Misty in the first episode, which I feel like Misty doing it makes a lot more sense because Misty is known to be a bit of a hot-headed character, and she just kind of sees this random kid wash up onto shore with a really beat-up Pikachu. So, I mean, you'd be kind of taken aback. But Nurse Joy getting so angry at Ash over Pikachu being in a bad condition coming to the Pokemon Center, it feels so weird. Like, why are you being so mean to him? You must see Pokemon come in bad condition like this all the time. You're a Pokemon Center. And, like, I mean, clearly Ash is a rookie trainer, and he's clearly gone through something pretty major and out of his control. So I don't know why she's just, like, scolding him. Like, you can't let your Pikachu get in condition like this. Like, it's really, like, he couldn't control that whole flock of Spearow. Just basically tried to kill him and his Pokemon. Like, it's not really his fault. We have a little minor animation error here, where Nurse Joy is putting Pikachu on the hospital bed of the stretcher. The Pikachu's tail is shown purely yellow without the brown start, so a little minor thing that they missed there, and there's plenty of those throughout the series. While Nurse Joy is attending to Pikachu's injuries, Ash calls his mother and Professor Oak, the latter of whom is surprised to discover that Ash is already in Viridian City. When Ash mentions the strange golden Pokemon he had recently seen, Professor Oak is skeptical that Ash had actually seen the Pokemon, saying not nobody, but most people go their lives without seeing that kind of Pokemon.
But I did see a flying Pokemon like that one. It flew right over the rainbow.
Don't talk such nonsense. You couldn't have seen this Pokemon. Trainers have searched their whole lives and never seen it.
It sure looked like it.
You must have been mistaken. Ah, there's my pizza. Coming!
Something we've got to address here, it's the elephant in the room. When Ash calls his mother, she makes mention of Ash's dad, and she says that it took him 4 days to get to Viridian City, which, when I heard her say that, I remembered her speaking about his dad, but I didn't remember the 4 days line, which I'm like, really? It took him 4 days to go from Pallet to Viridian? Like, even if we're going off anime logic and saying it's not as close as in the games, Ash made it there in 1 day. Like, it couldn't have been that far from Pallet Town. And, like, Ash's dad was supposed to take 4 days to get there, which, that's just mind-blowing. Like, they want to make it seem like Ash is doing really well, but also it more kind of just makes you think, wait, how incompetent was Ash's dad? But speaking of Ash's dad, this is currently the only episode of the Pokemon anime in which any of Ash's male relatives are mentioned. Delia mentions that it took his father 4 days to reach Viridian City, as I said, and that Ash is the apple of his eye. In the Japanese version, though, a little bit of trivia, on top of trivia, is that she also mentions Ash's grandfather, which people are always talking about who's his father, but yeah, because it's left out of the dub, Ash apparently has a grandfather, but they're never mentioned again. It's literally that's it. They have this one mention and they're like, you know what? I feel like they're probably just like, we're not really planning on doing anything with a father character. Like, we have no story planned, and it would kind of just be pointless if you bring a dad in just for him to like show up every time they go back to Pallet Town, which isn't that often. So I can understand why they're like, yeah, he didn't have a father present in the first episode, so let's just like not mention it again. This is clearly, early on where they don't have a clear defined role, which throughout these first few episodes you see a lot of this kind of plot threads that you think might potentially amount to something, but in reality they never amount to anything at all. I still find it pretty weird that they throw Arcanine up on the legendary Pokemon wall. If you're wondering what I'm referring to, when Ash is in the Pokemon Center, he sees a kind of, maybe a poster kind of type thing that has I think it's like kind of like an ancient, like sort of cave painting depiction of Moltres, Articuno, and Zapdos, which, that's the legendary Pokemon of Kanto. It would kind of, it makes sense that they'd be in the Pokemon Center. But then the fourth panel on this poster is, it's not confirmed to be Arcanine, but it's pretty clearly Arcanine, which is weird. People have speculated that because Arcanine has the Pokemon typing of the legendary Pokemon, it was put there. But I just don't really buy it. Like, I don't know. I feel like there had to be something more to this. Like, maybe the people in charge of the anime were misinformed, or just they're like, I don't know, let's throw anything there, because I don't know, like, it's, if they really were looking for another legendary Pokemon to fill that spot, why couldn't they have just been like, no, let's just have a 3-panel thing? I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. In the phone call, I've also got to mention Ash, the phone call that Ash has with Oak. He mentions the mystery pallet trainers as well. So we've got 2 mentions of them in this episode, and they're mentioned pretty frequently in the coming episodes until eventually they are written out. We've also got a couple of dub changes here. Ash's comment that had Oak realizing he had the wrong camera when he calls. Ash initially just sees the back of Professor Oak's head, and he has to switch the camera around. It was changed between the 2 versions. In the original, Ash asks if there was ramen cooking, and in the dub, because they don't like referencing like anything to do with Japan, he comments that he didn't recognize the back of Professor Oak's head. We also have another dub change to kind of westernize the anime. Professor Oak abruptly ends the telephone conversation with Ash. In the English version, Oak says that his pizza just arrived, while in the Japanese version, Oak realizes that his ramen is overcooking. And I feel like it's really, really weird, because, like, you can kind of see that something's cooking, and then he's like, oh, no, I've got to go get a pizza. It's like, why are you cooking if you're getting a pizza? It's just something that doesn't really make sense. It's one of those 4 kids problems that they kind of have, where they try to, let's westernize this so it adapts better for an English-speaking audience. But then they do it, and then it just creates more questions than if they were just like, yeah, he's eating ramen. Yeah, these actually aren't jelly-filled donuts. No one's ever seen a donut look like this. So yeah, it's a little bit strange. Afterwards, the girl whose bicycle was borrowed and destroyed by Ash angrily storms into the Pokemon Center, though after Ash explains himself, her concern shifts to Pikachu's well-being. Misty is just so mad here. It's, he literally needed the bike to save Pikachu's life. If he doesn't get that bike, then maybe, it all goes belly up. But she still does not give a fuck. She's just like, I need a new bike. Like, surely, the bike's probably going to be expensive, but surely you can be a little more chill. So at that moment, an alarm in the Pokemon Center sounds, and a villainous group named Team Rocket invade the building, and we get a little pulled out shot, like a faraway shot of Viridian City, and you see the Pokemon Center, and it is so extravagant. It's so excessively over the top. I don't know why. Why is this so massive? I don't think we ever see a Pokemon Center ever again that is just this kind of size and scope, which, I'm like, why? Why on earth do we need this to be so big? I guess I'll probably chalk it down to the kind of the syndrome that they had at the start, where they didn't really know where they were going. They didn't have the universe's rules and stuff put down, so they're like, oh, let's make this Pokemon Center extravagant, and then they're like, yeah, no, they're just going to be pretty regular buildings for the most part. Team Rocket's Pokeballs break a skylight, and coughing fills the air with smoke. Team Rocket recites their motto and destroys the center's electrical system in a scheme to try and steal the Pokemon inside.
Allow us to introduce ourselves.
To protect the world from devastation.
To unite all peoples within our nation.
To denounce the evils of truth and love.
To extend our reach to the stars above.
Jesse.
James.
Team Rocket, blast off at the speed of light!
Surrender now or prepare to fight.
Meowth! That's right!
And again here, we have Meowth referring to himself as the top cat. And I'm really... the first time it happened, I'm like, okay, this is a little awkward, but whatever. They probably haven't nailed the character yet. And then he does it a second time, and I'm like, is this supposed to be a running gag? Did they think oh, okay, this Meowth character, it's going to talk, and it's going to always refer to itself as the top cat. But as far as I can remember, I don't think he ever refers to himself as, well, he probably does refer to himself as the top cat multiple times from here on out, but he doesn't kind of refer to himself as the top cat in this way ever again. And it's like, I know, it's so weird. It had to have been a running gag, I guess, or maybe it was something in the original Japanese, and they're like, okay, we gotta translate this both times, and then they never went with it, and it's just something, a relic of the first couple episodes. The smoke animations when Team Rocket are introduced is really poor. It's like they have a filter over the screen that's like, oh, they're in smoke, and then the filter kind of wipes off to the right, and it's like, this doesn't really give much of a smoke effect, actually. It's it's not great, but I mean, it is their second episode, so animation's not going to be great, and it was a late 90s Pokemon episode, and they're kind of behind the curve a little bit when it comes to animation, considering they're a weekly show, so, I mean, it's a bit much to be expecting, top-notch special effects. We also have Team Rocket here. They're very disinterested in Pikachu when they first see him. Ash is like, there's no way I'm letting you have my Pikachu. And they're like, yeah, we don't really want your Pikachu. We want, the better, rarer Pokemon that you have here. So, go away. Which is literally, if you've watched the anime at all, you know that is a completely different stance to what they have for the next 20 years. Nurse Joy, Misty, and Ash retreat to a locked storage room with Pikachu, who is still on its stretcher. The power initially cuts out, though they have a backup system. It's Pika Power. Basically, it's Nurse Joy operating a generator through a bunch of Pikachu's electric powers, which is kind of weird. Nurse Joy begins trying to transport as many Pokemon as she can to Pewter City's Pokemon Center, but suddenly coughing breaks through the doors, and at Misty's insistence, Ash tries and fails to fend off Ekans and coughing with a Pidgey, an empty Pokeball, and a Rattata. Misty calls on her Goldeen to help, though without water, it flails helplessly before being recalled. A lot going on in this little segment here. Firstly, I think I need to mention that Jesse having a Ekans, and James having coughing is so weird. I'm so accustomed to Jesse and James having the evolved version, so like when they sent out these little pipsqueaks compared to what they have later on, it's like, oh well, yeah. I always forget that they do start off with Ekans and coughing, and Ekans particularly is not intimidating at all, and I guess coughing just being the one thing. Like when they get Arbok, and wheezing, they're so much more intimidating. Whereas here, they have these little, just tiny Pokemon, and it's like, I don't know how I can really take you that seriously as a threat here. I got questions for Nurse Joy. Does she just keep a bunch of Pikachu around purely to use as a generator? If so, that's pretty messed up. Like, I don't think those are there for any other reason, which it's kind of strange that you have these Pikachu here, just hanging around purely as tools. I don't know. It's kind of raises some ethical questions there. I would have liked to have seen though them follow up on the Pokeballs being transferred to Pewter City, because I believe at the end of the episode, Nurse Joy remarks that all of the Pokeballs had been successfully transferred, and then Ash is going to go to Pewter City in literally a few episodes' time. So, I mean, they could have had some kind of follow-up. I don't think they ever actually go to a Pokemon Center in Pewter City, which, I mean, I feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity. You didn't have to dedicate a whole episode around it, but they could have, had Ash go to the Pokemon Center and follow up, and I think that would have been a nice little nod to this episode. Also, Misty, I have major questions for Misty. She makes Ash battle first, which, I mean, he's a rookie trainer. You should just be battling yourself at first, but I can let that slide. What I don't like is why on earth does Misty call out her Goldeen? And then they make fun of her for sending out Goldeen, and then she's like, yeah, I know that water Pokemon can't battle on land. I was just warming up. Like, what do you mean warming up? Warming up by making the dumb decision. Like, the whole sequence is just really, really weird. And I mean, I think that they're implying that she's trying to stall and buy time for Ash and Nurse Joy, but it just comes off in the wrong tone. Maybe in the original Japanese it comes off better, but here it's just so weird. Like, Misty sends out Goldeen and you think like, oh yeah, she's gonna battle, and then they're like, no, Goldeen can't battle here, and she's like, no, I was just tricking. Like, you never get the actual feeling that she's doing some kind of like 4D chess. I'm actually stalling, because the entire time when she sends out Goldeen, Ash and Joy just stand in the background. Like, it's not like she's like, oh, go, and then she does this kind of stalling tactic. It's just, I don't know, and that doesn't play very well. We also have a error here. When Ash sends out the Pidgey from its Pokeball, its eyes are yellow instead of normal black and white. Not a big deal. But another error we have here is that Misty says that water Pokemon can't battle on land, although it's true of Goldeen. She actually owns 2 Pokemon that are water types and perfectly capable of battling on land. We see it all the time, and that's Staryu and Starmie, which, I mean, I can give the team on the anime a pass for that, because generally the water Pokemon can't really battle on land rule. It works for most water Pokemon, especially pure water Pokemon. In a hurry with Pikachu's stretcher, Ash hits Misty's bicycle, causing Pikachu to wake up. The other Pikachu at the Pokemon Center surround Ash's Pikachu, healing him as well as delivering a powerful electrical shock to Team Rocket. Ash then hops onto Misty's singed bike, and Pikachu absorbs the pedal-powered bicycle light's charge to hit Team Rocket with a abnormally powerful Thundershock attack. However, the attack mixes with Coughing's gas, resulting in a colossal explosion that destroys much of the Pokemon Center. So that beautiful, extravagant Viridian City Pokemon Center gets absolutely blown up. Maybe that's why they had it be so extravagant, kind of for effect. Like, look how powerful Pikachu was. It destroyed this massive, unnecessarily large building.
Too late, but not for the fireworks.
little bit of trivia here. This episode was modified after the episode 38 seizure incident, which is, the whole ordeal with Porygon that we will get to eventually. Originally, the scene where Pikachu uses Thundershock on Team Rocket was a sequence of rapidly flashing images of each Team Rocket member, but this was changed to a 4-square grid to reduce the flashing effect, and this change affects all home releases and rebroadcasts in Japan and all of the international versions of the episode, which makes sense. They were really, really conscious after the Porygon incident of flashing lights. They toned that down in quite a few episodes that had already aired that hadn't caused any problems as far as I know. But yeah, they really wanted to, cover their asses there. And I mean, it makes sense. The whole incident, it's, as far as I know, what I've heard is that the actual seizures that it caused, it's blown out of massively blown out of proportion. Like, people make it out as if millions of kids in Japan were having seizures when it was really very select cases. But obviously that bad press, they want to minimize any chance that it could happen again. So, moving on here, Team Rocket escapes and declares that their new mission is to capture Ash's apparently not so ordinary Pikachu for their boss, which, I gotta stop there. Do they not realize that Pikachu used the bike to, power up? They've basically been chasing Ash for 20 years off a misunderstanding. That Pikachu is no stronger than any other Pikachu, really, at this point. It just happened to team with Ash providing extra power, and it used a huge blast. It's... I don't know, it just emphasizes how dumb Team Rocket are, that they see this one act and they're like, yep, that's a crazy rare Pikachu, despite it never really showing this kind of power ever again. So, very, very strange decision by Jesse, James, and Meowth. As they are flying off, flying debris punctures their Meowth-shaped balloon and the trio blast off, though we don't get the classic blasting off again little sign-off until, I think it's a handful of episodes away. It might be the Clefairy and the Moonstone episode. The very next day, Ash, Pikachu, and Misty venture into Viridian Forest, with Misty having decided to follow Ash until he replaces her destroyed bicycle. Then Ash spots a Caterpie, much to Misty's disgust. We're going to learn quite a bit about her disgust for bug Pokemon in the coming episodes. And Ash prepares to catch it.
Pokeball, go!
Will Ash capture the Caterpie? What sinister plans are being concocted by Team Rocket? Will Misty ever get a new bicycle? All the answers on the next Pokemon.
And that ends the episode, but not before we have a little dub change to finish on. Misty introduces herself to Ash, Team Rocket, and the audience during the Pokemon Center battle in the Japanese version. However, in the English version, Nurse Joy reveals Misty's name to the audience at the end of the episode, which is a little bit of a change-up. I feel like they might have dubbed the episode and then got through and they're like, we haven't actually introduced this girl who's been in 2 episodes so far, so maybe we should actually name her. And they do. She also gets her name mentioned by the narrator at the conclusion of the episode. So that does us for the summary of the second episode here in Indigo League. And it's time for my kind of thoughts, my review thoughts on the quality of this episode. And maybe some of you might be surprised to hear that I think this episode is just okay. It's basically almost a bottle episode, which, if you don't know what a bottle episode is, it's basically an episode which utilizes the least amount of cast members, locations, and effects. Back in the day, it was kind of done as a cost-cutting measure to push out a very cheap episode of your show, and, you know, it kind of helps your budget a little bit if you're able to nail down one of these episodes where you can use, ideally you can use 1 or maybe at most 2 characters and a singular location. These days, though, I feel like it's more of an artistic choice, and you see a lot of episodes going for a really artistic episode where it's a single location, even sometimes like a single room, and then 1 or 2 characters and it's something that really breaks it up rather than being like a cheap, let's just fart this episode out kind of thing. Outside of the very beginning encounter, which is between Officer Jenny and Ash, on the kind of on the border of Viridian City, I would say, and then the final Ash and Misty encounter with Caterpie in Viridian Forest, the episode basically entirely takes place inside the Viridian City Pokemon Center, which I think is a kind of weird thing for the Pokemon anime. You don't see many episodes where it takes place in, basically one room. Like, there's a couple of rooms, I guess, in the Pokemon Center, but yeah, it's mainly takes place in the foyer of the Pokemon Center, which you'll see episodes where they take place maybe in a big mansion or a cave, but you still get this sense like that they're moving through it and there's different scenery. Whereas here it's basically just the Pokemon Center foyer, which is really really interesting that they kind of did that in the second episode. You also see that like they have a real shortage of humans here. Ash, Misty, Jenny, Joy, Professor Oak, Delia Ketchum, and Team Rocket are the only humans shown in this entire episode, which I would wager a bet is probably on the lower side of things for the show. I think, it gets stretched out a little bit by Ash calling Oak and his mother, but without that, it would be pretty low. It would be basically Ash, Misty, Team Rocket, and then Jenny and Joy in the background. I do like that this episode is entirely dedicated to introducing Team Rocket as the main villains, but I feel like the way that they do it isn't great here. I think they could have, at the very least, given off the illusion that they were some sort of threat to start with before making them purely, comedic relief. But they don't even get to do anything too funny here, and, as for them being serious, they just chase Ash, Misty, and Joy around for a little bit in the Pokemon Center, it's pretty sort of slapstick. It's not the most serious thing ever. And then they literally just get blown up. No funny lines, no cool plans, no cool mechs or traps. It's just weird, especially even the choice of their Pokemon being Ekans and Coughing is such a are you trying to make them comedic or are you trying to make them actually scary? What are you doing here? They're really stuck in two minds at the moment, and I feel like they don't really know which way to go, which we obviously know that they go the heavy comedic path, right up until the Unova region, where they do basically the first quarter of the region. They take a serious tone before going back to their usual selves. I think my favourite bits of the episode were when Ash kind of talks with Oak and his mother, because I think those parts sort of flesh out the world some more, and it does a bit more world building. Them talking about the arduous journey it took to get from Pallet to Viridian, and then Oak kind of doubting him but being happily surprised, and then obviously the mentions of the mystery trainers. I think that's probably my favorite bits. Overall, I feel like it's just a really weird vibe going on in this episode, and something that happens in the first maybe 10 episodes of the show before it settles into a groove. It's just some really weird vibes going in some of these episodes. They settle into that groove when they kind of bring Brock on board, and the episodes can kind of follow a bit of a formula. I don't want to call it formulaic, because I don't think it really gets too formulaic until maybe Johto, where they have an abundance of character of the day episodes. But yeah, there's definitely a groove here. While I did praise the last episode for making the Pokemon world feel alive, this one definitely makes it feel empty. As I mentioned earlier, we see literally nobody on the streets of Viridian City, and despite the anime going out of its way, it literally goes out of its way to make Viridian City seem huge. We just don't really see anyone. Ash feels so isolated and alone in this episode, and it's just definitely a massively weird vibe going on here. But yeah, that sums up my thoughts on the episode. I think it's okay. It's not bad. It's not a bad episode. It didn't really lose my attention throughout the whole thing, so I can't complain too much. I was definitely engaged, but yeah, there's definitely room for improvement. Moving on though, here's a recap of the major events happening in this episode. We saw Ash visit his first Pokemon Center and meet his first Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny. Misty introduces herself to Ash and declares that she's going to follow him until he repays the damage for her bike. Ash and Misty meet Jessie and James, two members of the villainous Team Rocket, along with their partner, a talking Meowth. Misty is revealed to own a Goldeen, her first Pokemon that we're introduced to. Team Rocket decides to follow Ash and steal his Pikachu, and then at the very end, Ash prepares to catch a Caterpie. And, well, there's no update at all to Ash Ketchum's win-loss record. I decided on the last episode I was going to be doing a segment where we look at Ash Ketchum's trainer battle win-loss record, and it's still 0 wins, 0 losses because he hasn't had a proper trainer battle yet. I'm not counting his encounters with Team Rocket as battles because, I mean, they're not. They're battles, but they're not proper trainer battles, and I only want to count those because you can't. Some of the encounters with Team Rocket and kind of moments along that line, you can't really tell whether it's a win or a loss. But with all that out of the way, it brings us to our segment where we look at the extra leftover bits of trivia, errors, and dub changes that didn't fit naturally into the episode discussion. Kicking things off with a fun fact that a lot of people probably might not know or have forgotten about. The events of this episode are actually referenced in the episode 2 Degrees of Separation by Team Rocket, who tell Dawn that they'd been chasing Pikachu for as long as she'd been alive. We also, in a kind of along the similar lines, the Officer Jenny from this episode actually reappears in a secret sphere of influence exactly 500 episodes later, which I appreciate that. 500 episodes later, and they go, you know what? Let's have this have a cameo appearance from the Officer Jenny that kickstarted it all, which I appreciate that. Our last bit of trivia is that several scenes from this episode, including Misty's attempt at distracting Team Rocket, were shown on the VHS, a sneak peek at Pokemon. And basically, most of the first episodes in Indigo League probably had some sort of feature on the sneak peek at Pokemon VHS. They cover a lot of ground in that VHS, actually. Moving on to errors here, on the wanted poster that we see at the start of Team Rocket, James is shown holding a lilac rose, when normally he holds a red rose. However, this might not be an error. It could just be down to, like the show being in its early stages and things aren't really set in stone, so it's hard to call it a definitive error. When Professor Oak is about to call the Viridian City Pokemon Center, Ash is on the far side of the curved desk. He then goes around in order to answer the call, and the desk is directly to his left now. But when Professor Oak talks to Ash, the desk layout has changed entirely. And later on, when Officer Jenny announces that there is a balloon with thieves that are trying to steal Pokemon, the desks have changed again. So they really didn't nail the layout of the Pokemon Center foyer too well here. Finally, the first 2 times James is shown in the doorway of the Pokeball room, his left hand is coloured like his skin instead of black, which not a major error there. Most of those kind of animation errors go unnoticed by most people, particularly kids, aren't picking up on that. A dub change here. When Cartoon Network would rerun the first dub season of Pokemon, most episodes would actually cut out the to be continued screen at the end, which I'm actually weirdly nostalgic about. I'm filled with such like a wave of nostalgia when that to be continued thing comes up. It's such a basic thing, and I don't know why it does, but I mean, it just does. So that would be cut, but this was one of the episodes in which Cartoon Network would actually leave the to be continued screen intact, which is most likely due to the narrator talking over it. But yeah, that's all the little tidbits and errors and changes, which brings us to the Pokemail segment. Each week on the show, I want to propose a question to the audience that you can discuss in the YouTube comments of this video. Head to the Who's That Pokemon YouTube channel, and on the in the comment section of this video, I want you guys to answer the following question. Do you like Team Rocket in the anime? Are you fans of the recurring comedy antics, or did you prefer their more serious tone in Unova? Obviously, putting this question out there because this is Team Rocket's debut, and personally, I like Team Rocket's like wacky antics, and like they do have some pretty entertaining stuff. But having said that, I did really love and appreciate the serious direction they took them in Unova. It was such a breath of fresh air. You had 4 seasons, so many episodes of them doing the exact same thing over and over again, and it felt like such a breath of fresh air. And I don't necessarily like dislike the comedic stuff, because when they actually like vary it up and do like different things rather than just like, they made the gang fall into a trap again, they fell in a hole and now there's a mech and they've got Pikachu and then they get it back. Like, it's not interesting when they do that, but when they do little sort of tweaks and variations on that formula, it's, even though it's not a huge departure from the exact same formulaic thing, it's so much more welcome than just rehashing the same thing over and over again. But I want to find out what you guys think. I know a lot of people love the comedic Team Rocket and were pretty bummed out when they became serious in Unova. So yeah, drop me a comment and tell me what your opinion on that is. But that basically does us for this episode. Thanks for listening to Who's That Pokemon. I really hope you enjoyed the show. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, basically everything except Google Play. There's some issues with podcasts from Australia trying to get onto Google Play. I actually think it's not possible, so that's annoying. But also, obviously, as I mentioned before, you can find me on YouTube, where you can actually find all my other Pokemon videos. I don't just do a podcast, I do a bunch of other Pokemon videos, ranging from doing special challenge playthroughs of the games, reviewing the games, and, you know, kind of doing video essays, deep dives into mysteries from the Pokemon anime, that sort of thing. So if that kind of tickles your fancy, head over to YouTube and subscribe so you don't miss any of those. You can also find the show on Twitter. It's at Who's That PKMN Pod to keep up with the latest updates for the show. And if you want to follow me personally on Twitter, my handle is at SourceMarlow. But yeah, as I said, that's all for this week. I hope you can join me again next episode as I take a look back at Ash Catches a Pokemon.